Shalom Akim. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Aruch HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elder bishops at Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the elect. So I just want to go into a lesson, and I'm not sure what the title is going to be, but we're just going to hop right into it. This is the book of Proverbs 1, and I'm going to start at 1. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. And this book does make us wise. Okay, but one thing that we have to remember, okay, wisdom is not just you knowing something. Okay, that's knowledge. You being, knowledgeable of certain things. Okay, wisdom is the application of the knowledge that you have. Okay, so us in this truth, we are to apply these words that we read. Okay, all the precepts that's in our head, when certain scriptures come up, okay, we at the camp, or we doing lessons, sit downs, or we even just going over the scriptures, certain precepts pop in our mind. Okay, we're supposed to apply those things to our lives as well. Okay, to the best of our ability. All right, we're not going to be 100% perfect. Okay, but for us to be truly wise, okay, you have to be applying these things. All right, because in this book contains wisdom. So we have to model our lives as much as we can, okay, to the scriptures. All right, and it's more than just, the dietary law, okay, keeping the Sabbath, keeping the high holy days. Okay, it's more than that. All right, there's other things in here that we have to adhere to as well if we want to consider ourselves wise. Okay, and there's certain things that are just, they're fundamental. Okay, things that you should already know. All right, and you should be applying it to your walk. Okay, it says to know wisdom and instruction. All right, and that's what this book contains, instructions on how to conduct ourselves down here on the earth. Okay. And somebody that's truly wise will not neglect to execute these things in their life. Okay, it says to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom. Okay, and again, you're only wise, okay, if you act on the knowledge that you have. Okay, for you to truly say that you have wisdom, you have to be applying these things in your life. Okay, let me bring this up real quick. This is the definition of the word wisdom, okay? Because wisdom is not just a thing, it's an action as well, okay? It's something that you do. If you have wisdom and you're a wise person, that means you actually act on these things that you know, okay? Being knowledgeable and being wise are two different things. You can be knowledgeable of the scriptures, okay? But wisdom comes when you actually apply these things, okay? This is the definition of the word wisdom. It says the ability to discern or judge what is true, right, or lasting, common sense, good judgment, the sum of learning through the ages, knowledge. It says wise teachings of the ancient sages, a wise outlook, a plan, or course of action. Okay, so when certain things pop up in your life, okay, you're supposed to use wisdom and act accordingly. Okay, act how Yahweh Shai will want you to act. Okay, and use our forefathers as an example. Okay, that's where wisdom comes in at. That's how you apply wisdom. Okay, it says the ability or result of an ability to think and act, utilizing knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense, and insight. Okay, and us having this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that Yahweh Shai has given us, you're supposed to have insight and foresight. Okay, you're supposed to know you doing certain things is going to cause Yahweh Shai to look at you a certain way. Okay, or you doing certain things is going to invite certain things to you, and we want to stay as far away from those things as possible. Okay, but someone with true wisdom, they would know and understand these things. Okay, they would apply the precepts that they are knowledgeable of, and they would execute those things. Okay, and if you're not doing that, you got to get on the ball, man. Okay, at least you be a reprobate. It says the ability or result of an ability to think and act, utilizing knowledge. Okay, and where do we find knowledge at? The knowledge is in the scriptures. Okay. It says experience, understanding, common sense, and insight, accumulated knowledge, salakia, erudition, or enlightenment. And then there's an archaic definition. It says a wise saying or wise sayings or teachings. Okay, and this is an old definition. It says soundness of mind. So that means you're on point. Okay. Sound mind comes from when you are, totally, okay, adhering to what Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai told you to do. Okay. Each situation that you find yourself in, you are applying the scriptures. Okay. And it's not just a part-time thing. This is a full-time thing that you got to do. Okay. It ain't you do it around the brothers and then, okay, we ain't around the brothers no more, so now I can omit certain things. No. First of all, you ain't doing it for us. You doing this for Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Okay? And each time someone goes astray from the path that Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai has set them on, they end up falling. Okay? Guaranteed. It's happened to countless individuals. All right? And you know different. Okay? That's why we got to make sure that we on point. And that goes for me as well. Because back in Proverbs 1:3, it says to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity. Okay, to give subtlety to the simple. All right, so we're supposed to be subtle. All right, because we was once simple as hell before we gained this wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Okay. It says to give subtlety to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. But what are you supposed to do with that knowledge? You're supposed to make wise decisions. Okay? Follow the teachings that Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai gave you and apply it to your life. Apply it to the situations that you find yourself in. Okay? It says a wise man will hear and will increase learning, and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise, okay, eventually you get on the level you understand why certain men say certain things. Okay, it'll make complete sense to you. All right, because you move with wisdom. All right, you're not just knowledgeable. See, basically, knowledge, when you go to school, okay, let's say you learn a trade, or you learn some type of skill, okay, because wisdom is a skill as well. There's theory where you just reading books, and then there's, the actual learning part, okay, lab, all right, where you actually are putting your knowledge to use, okay, so you get the experience of using this knowledge, okay, so you just being able, to quote precepts off the top of your head, you're knowledgeable, okay. But you have never been able to put that knowledge to use. You're not wise. You're just knowledgeable. Okay? And then when certain things happen to you, you don't fall on that knowledge. You just do whatever you want to do. You don't follow the teachings of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, which would make you unwise. Okay? It says to understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. The fear of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, is the beginning of knowledge. Okay? And we all know what the fear of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai is the keeping of his commandments to the best of our ability. Okay? The fear of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Okay? And when we obtain this knowledge that Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai has given us, it's up to us to apply these things to our life. Okay? We don't just go over precepts just to go over them. You're supposed to implement these things as well. Okay? Everything is in the scriptures for a reason. All right? And it's up to us to put these things into action. Okay? This is the book of Sirach 6:37. It says, let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, and meditate continually in his commandments. So we're supposed to be thinking upon these things. All right, let me bring this word meditate up. And if you're meditating upon the words of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, okay, the commandments of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, the precepts of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, you're going to be implementing these things in your life. Okay. This is the definition of the word meditate. It says to train, calm, or empty the mind, often by achieving an altered state, as by focusing on a single object, especially as a form of religious practice in Buddhism or Hindu, which we ain't dealing with that. Okay, that's not the definition of meditate. It says to engage in focused thought on scriptural passages or on particular doctrines or mysteries of a religion, especially Christianity. So basically to think about these things. Okay, it says to think or reflect, especially in a calm and deliberate manner. Okay, it says to engage in meditation, to plan in the mind, to intend. Okay, so you're supposed to think about these things and think about, okay, if I find myself in this situation, then this scripture applies. Okay, if I find myself in this situation, then this scripture applies. Okay, and we got to constantly be doing that. That's what this walk is about. Okay, because at each and every turn, Satan is trying to pull you away. Okay, that's why we have to continually meditate upon the precepts of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, the commandments of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, because it's easy to go astray. All right, and you don't want to get into a position where you are secure in the knowledge, okay, but you are not moving with wisdom. Okay, yeah, you know a lot of scriptures, but are you implementing these things? You know, so you start doing stuff that don't align with what Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai wants you to do, but you think you're good because you know a lot of scriptures. Okay, you can bring out a lot of precepts, but how are you moving? You know, are you applying the precepts to your life? Are you moving with wisdom? Okay, it's back in Sirach 6:37. It says, let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, and meditate continually in his commandments. So we're supposed to be constantly thinking about these things. Okay, and the reason why we constantly have to think about these things and play out different scenarios in our mind is because Satan is right there. Okay, as I'm making this video, Satan, he right here. Okay, because we got these bodies of flesh. All right, Satan's with us 24/7, man. So we have to constantly combat that. Okay. It says, and meditate continually in his commandments. He shall establish thine heart and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. Okay, and again, wisdom is the application of the knowledge that you have gained. Okay. So these different things that we read in the scriptures, we're supposed to be applying them. All right. And use our forefathers as an example. That's why these things are written in the scriptures. Okay. This is the book of Job 1:1. It says, there was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright. So he was upright in the sight of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Okay, the Most High judged this man to be on point. Okay, so if you want to be on point with Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, there's certain characteristics of Job that you want to apply to your own life. Okay. It says, and one that feared the Most High and eschewed evil. Okay, and this is one of the things you're supposed to implement in your own life. Okay, you're supposed to eschew evil as a servant of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. Let's look this word eschew up. So if you're in this truth and you're not eschewing evil, then hey, you know, you slipping. Okay, you need to get yourself right, at least you fall. Okay, the word eschew, it says to avoid using. Okay, so you're supposed to avoid evil at all costs. Okay, to avoid using, accepting, okay, participating in, or partaking of. Okay, which usually comes from individuals that you're around that's going to try to entice you to commit some kind of iniquity. All right, what's the best thing is to just avoid these people completely. Okay, it says to avoid using, accepting, participating in, or partaking of, to refrain from doing something. Okay, partaking in the goodies that this world has to offer. Okay, it says to keep clear of or abstain from something disliked or injurious. And what is injurious unto us? Committing iniquity. Okay, committing sin, because Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai despises it. Okay, and when we commit sin, we commit iniquity, we piss off the Heavenly Father. Okay, and the Most High, eventually he'll jack us up. So to avoid it completely, especially get away from people that are, participating in sin. All right, you really shouldn't even have no fellowship with sinners. You going off. Okay, hanging out with people that don't align with, the words and the commandments of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. All right, having them as your friends, you tripping. Okay, you all the way tripping, doing something like that. Now, if you got a certain business, you got to interact with these individuals, that's different. But you spending your free time with individuals that are of the world, you tripping. Okay, these people do not align with the ways of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, and eventually they're gonna make you go astray, because they're not into the word. Okay, they're not into serving Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. They're servants of the flesh. The more time you spend with them, the more that's going to rub off on you. Okay, so it's best to just avoid these individuals altogether, and that's how you apply wisdom. Okay, or apply the knowledge that you have. All right, to keep clear of or abstain from something disliked, injurious, to shun or avoid. So anything evil, you're supposed to shun and avoid it. Okay, because what eventually is going to happen, you're going to fall. All right, you're going to get enticed by these individuals. Okay, and you're going to start to do the stuff that they're into. Okay, which, let's go back to this real quick. This is Proverbs 1, and I'll just continue on from where I left off at. This is Proverbs 1, I'll read 7 again. It says, the fear of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck. My son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. So you're not supposed to be enticed by these individuals that are in the world. Okay? And the easiest way to do that is just avoid these people. Shut them. Okay? What you hanging out with them for anyway? You are either going to be for Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, or you're going to be against Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. You can't play the fence. All right? And why would you want to be around somebody that's just, they not the followers of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai anyway? That don't make no sense. It says, my son, if sinners entice thee, consent thou not. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance, and we shall find our houses with spoil. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Cast in thy lot among us, let us all have one purse. My son, walk not thou in the way with them, refrain thy foot from their path. So you're supposed to leave these individuals alone. Okay, and you applying this to your life is how you are, viewed as wise. Okay, because you already know what the end result is going to be. These individuals are going to die. They're going to get judged by Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. It says, for their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. Yes, that's pretty much it on that. So let's go to Psalms 1, and we'll wrap this up. This is the book of Psalms 1:1. It says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Okay, and you walking in the counsel of the ungodly is basically you participating in the things that the ungodly do. Okay, and if you hang out with the ungodly long enough, their ways are going to rub off on you. Okay, and another reason to avoid those things, it's easy for us to fall back into that. That's where we came from. Okay, we was born and raised in this world. Okay, so the things that the ungodly do, we're used to doing those things. Okay, It's pretty much like second nature to us. We've been doing it all our lives. So why would you put yourself in that situation? Okay, that's like an addict. You know, here it is. They did the 12-step program. They out of rehab, and then they going back to, you know, that same environment. They around a bunch of junkies. Eventually, they going to relapse. Okay? It says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. And part of the law is you avoiding sinners, just like we read in Proverbs, the 1st chapter. Here it is again in Psalms, the 1st chapter. Okay? Job also eschewed evil. So we're supposed to apply these things to our life, man, not disregard it. Okay? You claim you have wisdom, right? You claim to be a wise individual. Well, you're supposed to be applying these things to your life. Okay? Or are you a reprobate? You know, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. Okay? It says, and he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And that's what's going to happen to these individuals. They're going to die. Okay, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai is going to put these individuals to death. Okay, so what business do you have being around them? All right. But we'll close out with this. This is the book of Sirach 7 and 16. It says, number not thyself among the multitude of sinners. Meaning what? You ain't supposed to be around these individuals. All right. It says, but remember that wrath will not tarry long. Eventually, these individuals are going to be destroyed. And if you with them, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai liable to jack your ass up right along with them. Okay? Well, that's the reason why you don't see us participating in these things that these people do in the world. Okay? Going to all these parties and stuff. Okay? Because when judgment comes down, you can get caught up in it. All right? It says, number not thyself among the multitude of sinners, but remember that wrath will not tarry long. Okay, humble thyself greatly, for the vengeance of the ungodly is fire and worms. Okay, and that's what's going to happen to these wicked individuals. You know, so I just want to go into that. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai willing. It was edifying. I want to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Yahweh HaKodash, double honors to the apostles and the elder bishops at Great Millstone. Shalom.